the NFL depression abyss that I am in. It just sucks. I mean, it feels like everything that they did throughout the season, a 14-win season, evaporates when you get your teeth kicked in like that 2 weeks in a row, and Sam just completely turned into a pumpkin. It was a tough one to watch, but hey, Rams were the better team. They move on. There was a very nice, if I'm going to be objective about this, the fact that what's going on in L.A., one of those two teams advancing, the Chargers and the Rams, that was a big deal. So, those guys have been going through a lot, and hopefully have a good divisional playoff weekend. But obviously, I'm not in a good place. Boomer, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I didn't text you at all last night. I called you pregame just to see how you were doing. You were all pumped up. You had your Unreal Vikings sweatshirt on, and you had your Vikings blanket around you.
I did.
And you were all in, and I just wanted to leave you alone, especially, towards the end of that first half. Those I think it was 3 out of the last 4 possessions for the Vikings were just absolutely horrendous. 3rd and 7, Darnold throws an interception to Kobe Durant. The Rams punt up 10-3. The next Vikings series, Darnold does a sack fumble recovered by Jared Verse, 57 yards for a touchdown, 17-3 Rams. And then the interesting one for me is that Kevin O'Connell decided to go for it on 4th and 2 at the 50-yard line.
Yeah, I liked it at the time.
Right, it was a weird thing, especially with the way that Sam was playing. And I don't necessarily know that Kevin really had a feel for the game because his quarterback was way off. I mean,
I would have run the ball. That's what I said at the time. I said, I go for it and run the ball.
Yeah,
I'm not just like right up the gut,
right?
But do something, but just don't put it in his hands.
Right, and this is where Darnold takes yet another sack on 4th down. So, I mean, like, he has turned into a pumpkin. That we've come a long way from their win against the Packers that you were alluding to when you opened the show. And that's where they celebrated like they had just won the Super Bowl after they had beaten the Packers in Week 17. They still had to play Week 18 for the number 1 seed in the NFC. And ever since that celebration in the locker room where everybody got game balls, everybody was happy, Sam was up on everybody's shoulders, they let their guard down. And just speaking to a few NFL people last night and everything else, they couldn't believe now, after these last 2 games, what the Vikings did after that victory against the Green Bay Packers and how mentally they thought they must have accomplished something and that Sam was on the verge of a 5-year, $220 million or 4-year, $220 million contract, and now is probably on the verge of a 1-year, $5 million contract. I mean, what he did the last 2 games is just mind-numbing. I mean, I know not all the sacks are his fault, but then again, not all the sacks are the fault of the offensive lineman or the scheme. The quarterback has got to get rid of the ball. The quarterback, 2.5 seconds, ball out of your hands. And the other thing, too, is Kevin O'Connell, as a former quarterback himself, didn't recognize that his quarterback was completely off last night. His accuracy when he did throw was off. His decision-making was off. His hesitation, holding on to the ball in the pocket was off. I mean, all of this stuff that goes into playing the most important position in sports, Sam didn't have anything last night. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and he looked exactly the same as he did in the Detroit game. He completely lost his confidence. I mean, and that's really what it comes down to is this was a guy who had a lot of scars from the early portion of his career that he seemed to just cover up for the majority of the season, and he turned into a different guy. And then he gets in these biggest games, this one for the 1 seed on national TV. Everybody's watching you on the road. He's scared. He didn't trust himself. It's like you could see in his eyes,
yes,
and in his play,
yep,
that he wasn't ready for this. And that is one of the worst things I think that can be labeled in a player when you're just talking about competitiveness, that when the lights get bright, you shrink like that. And I think he's a great guy. I hope he gets a contract somewhere. But if I'm a coach or a general manager and I watch these last 2 games, I'm like, yeah, maybe this guy can win us a couple of games throughout the year. But if we ever made the playoffs, he's going to poop himself because I just watched him do that twice in a row after having a season where his name was being tossed around with MVP because he was so good. And then to play like that is just completely inexcusable. It's nerves, it's confidence. And Kevin O'Connell, who's coddled him this entire year, could not get him back to that confident guy that won 14 games, and it was ugly.
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold's going to go back into the QB blender, and he'll be a backup somewhere for maybe a,
Think
$5
about
million.
it. 2 weeks. 2 weeks out of it.
I'm just telling you,
Crazy.
maybe he'll get a little bit more, but he may be like the Drew Lock. He may be back at the Drew Lock starting gate. You know what I mean? That kind of thing, which is, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, that's the reality of the position. That's the reality of the performance that we've seen the last 2 weeks. And the inaccuracy is the thing that really bothers you, the balls that are being thrown behind people. I mean, Hawkinson makes a great catch and scores a touchdown. You know, that ball is literally a yard behind him.
Well, even Addison on the at the sideline, too. He threw that ball way up and, basically by Jordan Addison. He make this ridiculous catch and get his knee down in bounds. I mean, you're right. I mean, even some of the completions where these had to be spectacular catches just all over the place.
If you really paid attention to what Troy Aikman was saying last night, he was really getting frustrated just watching it. And there was a throw out of the backfield that I think he was throwing it to Cam Akers, and he threw it at his feet. Yeah. And Troy was like, "Whoa, that throw right there, that kind of shows you exactly what we're dealing with tonight."
Yeah,
and,
he was, I don't know if you want to call it the yips or whatever. He wasn't like all of his confidence is gone. I think people who've played athletics at any level, or if you're someone like us that you golf later in life, whatever it may be, and there's times you just lose it, like whatever it is, you just lost it. Like for this day, these 5 holes, it's just gone, and there's nothing I could do to get it back. And that's how Sam Darnold played 2 football games in the 2 biggest games of his life. And he's going to have to live with that forever.
I mean,
he may never get another opportunity like these 2 games ever in his career.
Exactly. And, I feel bad that, Matthew Stafford goes right down the field on the first possession, so the defense really was caught off guard and wasn't ready for it. But they did settle down. They did settle down. And when they finally got, the Rams to settle down offensively, you got the sack fumble for a touchdown. You have the interception that is thrown after they're moving the ball. And then you have the 4th down at the end of the half. I mean, those 3 possessions right there, those 3 possessions basically lost the game in my eyes it's that simple. It's those 3 plays. The interception, the sack fumble, and the sack on 4th down, which gave the Rams great field position right at the end of the half.
And you felt like the Vikings had momentum in each of those drives, and that's where it's on Sam. And it's never on just one guy. As you mentioned, the offensive line wasn't great, but still there were times where I'm just like, throw the ball, just get rid of it. And he's dancing around, the happy feet, and he's looking around. Just get rid of it. If there's nothing there, do not take another sack.
You don't have to be a former quarterback to watch that performance and see how you see it and how you're talking about it. It's true. And there was just, there were a couple of sacks he couldn't get out of. I know that. But then there were other ones where he's holding on to it, and there's guys standing wide open right in front of him. Literally right in front of him. And, they may not be balls that need to be thrown down past the sticks to get a first down. You just drop it off to your secondary guys that are standing right in front of you and let them see if they can make miss a tackle or, make a guy miss a tackle and then get a first down on the ground. Like if it's 3rd and 8 and you feel pressure and there's guys that are leaking out, just drop it to them and let's see if they can break a tackle or something to make a first down. That's what they get paid for.
Yeah, and this is a couple years ago, obviously, when they lost to the Giants in that wild card weekend. They had a 13-win season that year. They had a 14-win season this year, and Kevin O'Connell is a good coach. And they had Kirk Cousins that year. They had Sam Darnold this year. But there's that next level that they just don't have. And
it's that position.
It's
that position.
It's coach and quarterback. And I'm not knocking, but Kevin O'Connell's not Sean McVay. Sam Darnold's not Matt Stafford. And in that situation, when they're getting displaced, they're taking buses and all the stuff that's happening in L.A., you got a Super Bowl winning head coach and Sean McVay that gets that team ready to go. And on their first possession, when the Vikings defer, they go right down the field and it's 7-0. And then you got Kevin O'Connell over there just going, well, what the hell's going on? And Brian Flores' defense, looking the way it did.
Yeah, but I think the defense...
They were bad in the beginning of the game, and their tackling was awful.
I know, but they settled down. I'm telling you, it's a sack, fumble, touchdown.
Yeah, that was the end of the game.
It's the interception. It's the sack on 4th down.
No, trust me,
those things all lead into putting the defense in a really, really difficult position.
But also, the fact that they went right down the field and scored. I'm not going to say I didn't think Sam was going to play well no matter what. But there is a different feel if you get a 3-and-out or they don't score, or you hold them to a field goal, and then it's like, all right, here we go. When you get down 7-0 like that, and then Sam's got to go out, and he's like, oh, here we go again. Pressure's on me. it makes it even worse. Now, like I said, I still don't think that he was going to play well, but it's just tough, from a fan standpoint. It's tough because you have this fun year and all the wins, and now it feels like it was all for absolutely nothing.
I was just trying to think, after the Vikings had won their 14th game, which is the game against the Green Bay Packers, where they celebrated in the locker room, had Sam up on their shoulders. I guess they were celebrating the fact that they had won more games in a regular season than any other Viking team. Is that right?
That's not right. 1998, they were 15-1.
Oh, 50. All right, so there you go. So again, what are they celebrating?
I just think that we've seen a ton of that stuff, though, guys getting game balls, other teams. I mean, I think that Sam had an unbelievable game. He came into the locker room, and they were really happy about it. I think that that's a good point, and I don't totally disagree with it. I think the bigger point is the fact that the team, I don't think, said, now we're set. We won 14 games. I mean, I think they're smart enough to know, and that the whole group is smart enough to know that if you beat the Detroit Lions, you get the 1 seed. If you don't, you get the 5 seed. To me, what it came down to more than anything is that Sam Darnold in the biggest games of his life crumbled. He wasn't the same guy. He lost his confidence, and he stunk, and he had a chance to be great in the big moment and failed. I don't think it was from lack of concentration or think that they had accomplished something.
I think you take the edge off. That's what I think. But
how could you take the edge off when you're 14 wins, you're playing a division rival, and you're going on the road for a 1 seed, and you're telling me that you're taking your foot off the gas pedal? If that's the case, fire Kevin O'Connell this morning.
Well, let me ask you a question. If that were the Patriots and that were Bill Belichick.
All right. I mean, so we're going to take the outlier of the greatest head coach in the best dynasty in the NFL and try to compare him to that.
If it's Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, they've won Super Bowls before. I don't know what to say. I can go through a million examples of teams that celebrate in the locker room probably too much for things that don't matter.
Right.
I mean, how about Dan Campbell, for God's sakes? Every week it's a you were a game ball, and no one's saying anything about him. Sam Darnold peed himself in the biggest moments. That is the biggest reason why. Now, I mean, it is. I don't believe that they thought they accomplished their full goal after that game. Maybe they celebrated too much, fine. But there is no way that those guys who went through that entire season decided to just be like, hey, we did everything we needed to do. We beat the Green Bay Packers. We got 14 wins. Let's just go into Detroit and not care. There's no way. No way as a competitor you could be like that. This was Sam Darnold stepping on the field and going, oh, crap. And I'm going to play 2 teams that are better than me, that are better coached, and I don't have it. I don't got it.
Let's say that the Ravens and Bills, well, they're playing in an epic game this week. Lamar versus Josh, 6:30 CBS Sunday. Biggest game of the year with 2 of the hottest players in the NFL, 2 of the hottest teams in the NFL, 2 teams that both ran for over 200 yards. Actually, Baltimore almost ran for 300 yards in their opening playoff win. Let's say the Ravens go in and win. What's that locker room like, and what is John Harbaugh saying?
I don't know.
Let's just.
They celebrate after every single. Like, they celebrate in baseball with a champagne celebration after when they get into the playoffs.
Different sport, and that's 4 out of 7, 3 out of 5.
Do you just want me to agree with you so you could move on, or we're just going to keep going back and forth? So I don't agree. We could agree to disagree on this one, but you giving me all these examples is not going to change my mind. So that may work in other areas of your life where you keep hammering people over the head with the same point. For me, I'm not changing my mind. They did not decide
celebratory cork.
They just didn't decide it's over. We accomplished everything. There's no way. It's worse, actually, I think, what happened. They came up small when they needed to be big. And that is the story of this organization. When you're 15-1. In 1998, you're a 10-point favorite in a home playoff game and a championship game, and your kicker's never missed a kick. It's a 38-yarder, and he misses it. You came up small in the biggest situation. Brett Favre, when he's a Minnesota Viking, he's playing the New Orleans Saints. He throw 4 picks in the entire season. He's in that situation in New Orleans, throws across his body in the biggest play of the game. Came up small in the biggest situation.
That was Bountygate.
Yeah, I know it was. So, I mean, it's embarrassing for Sam Darnold, and it's frustrating. I really wasn't angry about it. It was more disappointed, but as I said the other day, big decisions make themselves sometimes, well, you don't have to worry about who the quarterback's going to be in Minnesota next year. That's for sure, because that conversation is over. And they're going to hand it over to that little kid, and we'll see what he does.
They're going to hand it over to that little kid.
He's a little kid. He looks like a little kid.
I know he looks young, yes.
But now I got nothing to all I have to do now is support him. I have to. I got no choice.
The guy's going to suck in the NFL. He just is. He doesn't have it. I'm just telling you right now, you could smell it.
Yeah, well,
That's how he started the season, and this is how we end the season.
Yeah, well, that was
Sorry
actually
about
before he was drafted by the Vikings.
Okay.
That was actually before. But I still don't like him as a player, but who knows? I got to support him. So I'll support him, see what he's got, whatever. I mean, that's just the dumbest thing we do is care this much about sports. It really is. And it's a part of the reason why we're sitting here having jobs, because we're like-minded and the audience cares as much about sports. But it really is just to emotionally invest in something you have zero control over, for them to just, your teams to kick it. And the Vikings, it's not like, you've said this before to me, it's not like they're the Browns, not like they're the Jets. But what they do is they are the blue ball team of professional sports. They get you right there, and then they walk away. That's what they do. They get you right there, and you're like, oh, man. And then it's like, see ya.
It's kind of like the New York Rangers.
Whoa. But you saw them win a cup.
Yes, I know.
It's different.
That was 1 year, and it was a long time ago.
Okay.
I feel like my dad.
I know, but still, I mean,
I really do, honestly.
I know you want more, but it's just that stuff falls on deaf ears with me, because I was 4 years old when the Mets won in '86. The Vikings had never won a Super Bowl. Obviously, not in my lifetime, since they'd never won one. So it's like I would be thrilled to just get one. I would, especially at this point in my life. I could just be like, exhale. Now I know what that feels like. That's awesome, and I could just go on with my life. And this is why, another reason why I do this whole activated, not activated thing. Because I stay it's almost like if you were dating and you had a lot of failures in dating, and then you really wanted to get married, and you're like, I'm not going to get excited yet. This girl seems like she's great, and boy, I mean, she's awesome, and she likes me, and my parents like her, and she's got a good job, And then all of a sudden, one day you wake up and she's got an ice pick over your head while you're sleeping, going, ah! You're like, son of a bitch, another one. I was just getting excited.
Your balls blue.
Right. I mean, that's what's so frustrating about that organization. I mean, it could be worse, but it's like they're just the biggest.
It could be worse.
Blank tease of all time.
Could be worse.
That's what it is.
But again, they're a team that is stuck right now. It's a team that's stuck back in quarterback hell again.
Well, I mean, all right,
but they've had quarterbacks that have played well. That's the thing. They have had a number. I mean,
it's not you drafted a guy number 10
back
overall.
To Fran Tarkenton, for God's sake.
Yeah, but they really haven't had a great history with quarterbacks.
I don't know. Warren Moon had a great year there. Dante Culpepper.
Yeah, I mean, but they're not. I mean, it's
Randall
not
Cunningham.
But you
Cousins.
play in a division that went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers.
I know,
so
but the problem is that they've always been good enough, but they just couldn't get the guy. They thought they had the guy maybe in Dante Culpepper.
I love
They
Dante,
thought that guy. They thought they had that guy, and and then they had then Joey Harrington went to Detroit.
Yeah,
Christian Ponder.
Yep, Christian Ponder.
Thought, okay, we got Christian Ponder now, and that didn't work out.
No, Christian Ponder, Tavares Jackson. Kirk Cousins had some good years there, but obviously we know that situation. But I don't
Case
know.
Keenum, you had the Minneapolis Miracle. You had to be one of the greatest days of your life.
Yeah, and then the next week they lost 38-7 in a championship game. So
I mean, but
38
I'm just saying
unanswered.
That day that you had the Minneapolis Miracle,
Yeah, it
had
was
to be
fun.
a great day.
It was a good one. Yeah, it was a good one.
That was great.
Sure, right. But yeah, and as far as quarterback hell goes, I don't know if that's fair, because I mean, just objectively speaking, I don't love J.J. McCarthy as a prospect, but objectively speaking, they drafted a guy number 10 overall.
Was that you after the Minneapolis Miracle?
Yeah, it was. That's what I did in my house. I was recreating it for you.
That was awesome. Look at that.
That was nice that nobody changed the studio after everything that went down. Nothing was different except for me when we started. I was looking back on that now. I really had everything stacked against me. Let me tell you.
No, you didn't. Listen, we were all pulling for you.
At least they changed the name signs out. They didn't put tape over.
I mean, Al, were we not all pulling for him or no?
I'm just kidding. I'm not being serious. I was just looking back at that studio. I was like, it's just like when I see that studio, I think of you and Greg, obviously.